The Chicago Bears were last year's breakout team in the NFL as they really burst onto the scene and made themselves known as a legitimate contender in the NFC. Ben Johnson came in and immediately turned around a franchise that looked irredeemable for times over the last decade, and now there is a ton of excitement around what the Chicago Bears are building. And in today's video, we are going to talk about this Bears team and if they have what it takes to potentially get to the Super Bowl. And I'm excited to talk about this team, but before we do that, be sure to hit that like button as a football animation will appear when you do so. And comment down below if you guys think I am too high or too low on this Bears team entering the year. But let's talk about Chicago, because this was one of the best resurgences we've seen from a franchise, a team that has consistently been picking inside the top 10. They had the #1 pick in back-to-back years, one of them via the Carolina Panthers, but still just a mess of an organization. And they got one of the best head coaching candidates that we have seen hit the market in a number of years when they hired Ben Johnson last offseason. And it felt like from the get-go, Ben Johnson was just going to come in and completely turn around this franchise. There's so much to like about Ben Johnson from a schematic point of view, where his offense is one of the most multiple, unique offenses in the league, where you will see a lot of that under center play action, outside zone run game. They want to weaponize these tackles in space, a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of bubble screens, and just relying on the playmakers. And I think he's one of the best true play callers that we have in the NFL. I think he's done a absolutely phenomenal job, and already I would rank him as a top 3 offensive mind in the sport. And immediately he came in, Chicago ranked 7th in offensive DVOA in 2025. They ranked 3rd in rushing DVOA. He really did a fantastic job coming in and just changing the type of offense that they ran, where they have athletic players to get out in space. And from a schematic point of view, I just think he gets it. But there's also something to be said about his leadership style. And you saw the kind of locker room videos where the locker room just rallies around him. He seems like a guy that would be just incredible to play for. He is a incredible leader in that locker room. I think he got a lot of that from seeing what Dan Campbell did in Detroit. And you look at what he's kind of been able to do from a schematic point of view. And after just one season, I think Ben Johnson is a top 10 head coach in the NFL. I think his ability to utilize 12 personnel, where the Bears ranked 6th in the NFL in 12 personnel, utilize this unique group of weapons that they have. I'm all in on Ben Johnson. And this is his offense. So like Press Taylor is the offensive coordinator. If he does well, he might get poached to be an offensive coordinator, maybe a head coach otherwise. We saw that happen with Declan Doyle, who was their offensive coordinator last year. But it is Ben Johnson who is kind of the brainchild of this scheme. And on the defensive side of the ball, I do think that Dennis Allen is a really, really good defensive coordinator. He's been an underappreciated defensive mind over the last few years, dating back to New Orleans, which those offenses with the Saints were really bad, but their defenses always seemed to be really good. They play with a pretty heavy 4-man front. They're going to play a lot of man coverage. The Bears did do a lot of that last year, and I think that we've seen them really play a good amount of man coverage. You look at kind of the man rate last year. The Bears ranked in the top 10 in man coverage run last year. They were pretty aggressive in man coverage. That's been a big staple of Dennis Allen's defense. A lot of pre-snap disguise. They're going to utilize 4-man fronts, and you know, he likes these bigger ends that can kind of do a little bit of everything. And we've seen a lot of that have success with Dennis Allen. Do I think that he got the most out of this defense last year? No. In terms of defensive DVOA, they ranked 25th, which, you know, I think kind of checks out. The problem with the Bears, or I guess why they were so successful last year, was they just forced a ridiculous amount of turnovers last year that I think it's pretty unrealistic to expect them to repeat that. They were 25th, as I mentioned, in defensive DVOA rankings. They didn't rank super high in PFFs either, ranking in the bottom half of the league. So I think a lot of that's going to come down to the personnel, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But I think this is one of the best coaching staffs in the league, and there is a lot to really get excited about here in Chicago from a coaching point of view. But this offense in particular is so exciting, and it's exciting because you have one of the most exciting young quarterbacks in the NFL in Caleb Williams, who, for those of you that have followed my draft coverage, you guys would know Caleb Williams is my guy. He's one of my favorite players I've ever gotten to scout, and he looked really good last year. I think there were still some inconsistencies, and we're going to talk about that with Caleb, but particularly that second half of the season. I think from weeks 14, where he had that good game against Green Bay, to the end of the year is really where you saw Caleb Williams catch fire. 37 big-time throws, 24 turnover-worthy plays, which is a very high number. You want to see that come down quite a bit. What I love about Caleb Williams is, yes, he's an incredible athlete. I think his pocket presence and the way that he's able to avoid pressure is phenomenal. He can make throws that I legitimately don't think any other quarterback in the league can make. He had a throw this past season in the back of the end zone that was just one of the most high leverage, difficult throws, splitting the defense. He can make those throws, and I think you've seen that. He's been really good at making big throws. And I also think you have to talk about the clutch factor with Caleb Williams, where there were so many fourth quarter comebacks. You look at what he did in regulation against the Rams in the playoffs, where he was unbelievable in that game. The Green Bay game, the San Francisco game, he had some huge plays in that game where he had his season high and passing yards in the regular season. There's just so much to like about what Caleb Williams brings from a kind of all-around perspective in terms of the upside, but let's be honest with ourselves. Caleb Williams, is good as he is, and I would rank him as a top 12 quarterback already. The thing about Caleb Williams is the accuracy has been a pretty big issue for him throughout the first 2 years of his career. He completed less than 60% of his passes last year, and I do think that completion percentage is an overrated stat. So let's look at adjusted completion percentage, where he was still under 70%. I want to see that number get significantly better. I think there's a lot of reasons why Caleb Williams does struggle with accuracy. I think he does try to force the ball into some really tight windows. I think he makes bad decisions at times, and it's why he has 43 turnover-worthy plays throughout the first 2 seasons of his career. That number's got to get better. I think he's got to do a better job of processing, taking what the defense gives him. And I do think he tries to play hero ball too much. And this was one of the biggest concerns with him coming out of USC. He averages 3.14 seconds time to throw, which is one of the lowest amongst starting quarterbacks in the league last year. He holds onto the ball for a really long time, just trying to look for these big plays. And he ranked amongst starters the lowest in the NFL. Brock Purdy's at 3.2, Lamar Jackson's at 3.1. There's some things he's got to get better at, but I think the sky's the limit for Caleb Williams. I am all in on Caleb Williams. He's a guy that I think could easily win MVP this year, because if he improves that accuracy, I really like what he can bring to the table. In terms of backup quarterback play, you've got Tyson Bagent, who's had to come in and start a little bit and has been perfectly fine. Case Keenum is here as like a veteran option, but this is Caleb Williams' team. I think Tyson Bagent could win you some games, but I'm all in on Caleb Williams. And it leads us to this group of playmakers where I really love what this team has how they've built this skill positions, where in the run game, you've got a really good 1-2 punch. DeAndre-Swift, I think, really broke out last year for the Bears. First year in Chicago, it just was not awesome for him. He averaged the lowest yards per attempt of his career at 3.8. He just felt like he wasn't anticipating rushing lanes. That's been a big question with him dating back to his time at Georgia. Is DeAndre-Swift's a really fun athlete. He's really good in space, but he just does not have good vision. And I thought last year he really started to piece it together. Had the best season of his career rushing-wise, where he ran for 1,200 yards, which is a career high, 10 touchdowns, which was a career high, had a career high in missed tackles forced. Yards after contact per attempt was the highest it's been since 2022. he was awesome. And they do run a lot of wide zone. And with his athleticism and his shiftiness, that ability to kind of plant his foot, make guys miss in the open field, he's been really good. And I think he fits this scheme really well. He had a few really big plays last year. Do I think that he's this superstar number one running back that, can be a top 10 running back in the league? No, I don't really see that with DeAndre Swift, but I think he's a really solid running back, probably in the 12 to 22 range, and you feel pretty good about that. And he's a really valuable receiver where he got over 2,000 receiving yards on 277 receptions throughout his career. So I like what he gives you in that phase. But Kyle Monangai, as a rookie, was awesome for this team as a 7th-round pick who I think was very overthought throughout the pre-draft process because he didn't run a very fast 40. I don't really care about 40 time with running back. If you can take care of the football, if you can play through contact and you can run for tough yards, I'm in on you. And I think Kyle Monangai is a really good running back. Not a great athlete. He's not the most shifty, but had some big plays. His longest run of the year was 39 yards, which was longer than DeAndre Swift's longest run, which I think is interesting. He's got vision. He's a really good power back. He's great after contact, can make guys miss with his physicality. They're trying to recreate what Detroit has with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and I think they've done a good job. It's a very toned down version of that duo, but I think it works here. And then you get Roschon Johnson back this year, who didn't play much last year for this team. I liked Roschon Johnson when he was coming out. He's had some good moments. He's got size. He's an all right athlete, was a great receiver. We'll see if he can kind of become a staple in this offense as a receiving back. But overall, a really solid group of running backs that I think elevates the floor of this offense. And then we'll talk about this group of weapons. And I'm not going to start with the wide receivers because we always start with the receivers. But I think that this team is one of the few teams that their number one weapon is going to be their tight end. It's Colston-Loveland. Colston-Loveland, from the Cincinnati game on, really was, I would argue, a top 3 tight end in the league. He was absolutely unbelievable. He was started off really slow, and there's a lot of people like, did the Bears pick the wrong tight end? Should they have taken Tyler Warren, who was playing really well for the Colts? He, in week 9 against Cincinnati, goes for 118 yards, and he didn't look back. He was incredible in the playoffs, made some really big plays. Colston-Loveland, I'm a Colts fan, so, I love Tyler Warren. Colston-Loveland is 100% the right pick, though. He was incredible for this team as a rookie, where I just loved what he did as a route runner. He was shifty. He was able to create space. He had incredible hands for a rookie, which I think was a really big, valuable part. Just 2 drops for a 2.8% drop rate on the season. Made plays happen after the catch. Just was this vertical weapon for this team. He had speed. He had tough hands. And I thought as a blocker, he was really solid. I thought he was always underappreciated as a blocker for Michigan, but had some success there, particularly as a run blocker, where I thought he was really good. I'm all in on Colston-Loveland. Take him in fantasy. I think he had 6 touchdowns, 906 yards as a rookie. And that's with very minimal production through the first 8 weeks of the season. I think he's going to be an absolute superstar, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if we're talking about him as the best tight end in the league after this year because of what he can do as a receiver. In terms of depth in the tight end room, you've got Cole Kmet, who I think is maybe the best tight end too in the league. I think he's, they did the right thing by picking a tight end. Cole Kmet is 6'6". He's 260 pounds, a solid blocker, can give you a little bit as a receiver. I don't think he's anything spectacular, but he plays his role really well here. And for a Bears team that ran as much 12 personnel as they did, I think Cole Kmet's a really good fit for this offense. And then they draft Sam Roush in the 3rd round, who I thought was a really good pick for them. A little bit raw, a little bit stiff, but a guy that I do think brings a lot to the table as a blocker. I'm really excited to see what he can do this year. I think there's a really good tight end room. And then in the receiver room, it's not as talented on paper, but there is a lot of potential upside here. It starts with Romeodunze, who I know some people are kind of out on romeodunze as a prospect, and I will get on here and admit that I was wrong. I had romeodunze ranked ahead of Malik Neighbors in that draft class, and through the first 2 seasons of their career, I think it's been pretty obvious that Malik Neighbors was the better prospect. romeodunze, I thought, was good through his first 2 years. He's not been great, I think, is kind of the concern with him. Was really good in contested catch situations in 2024, where he came down with 72% of them. 2025, just 35%, had 5 drops each of the last 2 years. Look, I think romeodunze is a physical ball winner for the position. He's a true X. He can win that short to intermediate part of the field. He's not this superstar athlete, but for a bigger receiver, I think he's quick. He gets out of his stance well. There's a lot to like about romeodunze. I'm still holding out hope that now that Keenan Allen's not here for the second year in a row, you're not going to be blocked by DJ Moore, and he's going to be the number 1 guy. I think there's a lot of trust between him and Caleb Williams. So I am buying stock on romeodunze, but I'm buying even more stock in Lutherburden, who really burst onto the scene last year and single-handedly, I think, forced DJ Moore out of town. Very similar situation where we didn't really see a lot of Lutherburden. He was really good week 3 against Dallas, where he randomly went for 100 yards, but was kind of used as like a rotational player. He started a game here, started a game there, but from like week 14 on, he was really good. He was a player that I thought was completely overthought in the pre-draft process. There were talks of character concerns. I didn't see those as a rookie. I mean, he is a truly special player with the football in his hands. He is awesome after the catch, where he had 383 yards. I think he can make guys miss with ease. He's got that just twitchiness and shiftiness in the open field. I think he's a good route runner. He can win deep. He can win to all 3 levels of the field. He can work inside and outside. He's very similar to DJ Moore as a player. I think he's got to improve the hands, where he did have a 10% drop rate, but overall, like, that being your 1-2 punch with colstonloveland is really solid. For a team that will play 12 personnel primarily, you're not going to see a lot of the wide receiver 3 here. And that's probably for the better, because I think the more you look at the depth in this receiving room, it's not awesome. Like, you've got Khalif Raymond, who kind of came over from Detroit. Really fun, like, gadget type of player. He's undersized, but really fun with the football in his hands. Had some big years for Detroit as like an athlete, good on special teams. Don't really think we're going to see a ton of him here. Xavier Thomas was a 3rd-round pick for this team that I like. Xavier Thomas, I felt like a good bit. I thought this was really high for Xavier Thomas, as in, a little bit of an undersized, athletic, really fun with the football in his hands. Very similar to Khalif Raymond. I think that's kind of the best case scenario for him. Scotty Miller comes here, who's bounced around the league. Ja'Day Walker's here. It's fine wide receiver depth. I think they do kind of get the benefit that they do play in 12 personnel, and you're not going to see a lot of that depth. But overall, a great group of weapons for a young quarterback, and a lot of upside for this to be even better. But let's talk about this offensive line, which to me is in a good spot, but you've got a massive question mark, I think, at the left tackle position, where Ozzie Trapillo, who we'll kind of kick off the conversation with him, he came in last year as a rookie, and I thought looked the part. Like, I was a pretty big Ozzie Trapillo fan in that draft class. He ended up starting from week 12 to the wild card game, but he ultimately ends up getting hurt in the playoff, and I don't really know what the timetable is for his injury right now. He ruptured his patellar tendon. Now, we saw Josh Simmons come back from the same injury last year for Ohio State, suffered that injury kind of in November, came back and was ready to start the season. I do think that he can come back this year. Like, there's potential. He was really good for this team, though. He was a good athlete, graded out well as a run blocker and pass protection. He held his own, did not suffer very many penalties, which is something you see from tall tackles because they lunge a lot. And Ozzie Trapillo is 6'8". I hope that he comes back, because I thought he was really solid for this team. But they have a couple of other options to kind of be placeholders here if they need be. Braxton Jones is still here, a former what was he, a 5th round pick? Started the first 4 games of the year, was very inconsistent. Braxton Jones has been a very interesting player throughout his career because I think he's had some really good moments throughout his tenure here in Chicago. This team just never seems to really fully trust him. I think he could be fine here. Like, I think he can hold his own as a pass protector. I think he could be really good in that phase. As a run blocker, he gives you enough. He's 6'5", he's 310. I think that he's pretty technically sound for a guy from Southern Utah as a former 5th round pick. He's kind of had to scrap his way up the depth chart. I think he can be a nice placeholder here and maybe can be your starter for the rest of the season if you kind of want to play this slow with Ozzy Trapillo. And then you bring in Jedrick Wills, who is an interesting player. He kind of sat out all of 2025 recovering from an injury. He's kind of been a bust of a 1st round pick, to be honest. Not a great run blocker. He's okay in pass protection. He's had some good moments there, but his body has just regularly failed him, and he's seemingly always injured. You've got some decent options at tackle here. Even Kieran Amagaji, former Yale product, maybe he could swing inside, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of him. But that's the biggest question mark to me on this offensive line. Outside of the center position, which we'll just talk about that really quick, you kind of get the unfortunate news that Drew Dahlman's going to retire, and they had to kind of panic and make a couple of moves here. I would have loved to have seen them get Cade Mays. They opt to trade for Garrett Bradbury, who I don't love. I think if he's your weakest link on the offensive line, you'll be okay. He started last year for the Patriots, and he was okay. He was a perfectly fine center. He's up better as a run blocker than as a pass protector, but he just always seems to allow pressures. He's allowed multiple sacks every season of his career. Probably had the most consistent start to finish year of his career this past year for New England. They also drafted Logan Jones in the 2nd round. Again, thought this was really high, but Logan Jones is a really good athlete that ran a lot of wide zone at Iowa. So for a scheme that runs a lot of wide zone, Logan Jones is a good fit here. But what this team does well is the other 3 positions on this line. I think you're pretty set here. Joe Thuney at left guard, was an absolute steal of a trade. One of the best offensive linemen on the interior in the league. I think it's him. It's Quentin Nelson. It's, maybe Chris Lindstrom. But from a pass protection vantage point, I think Joe Thuney's the best. He'll be 34 years old in November, but incredible athlete, a guy that started at tackle throughout his career. He's got great foot speed. He anchors well. He's really technically sound with his hands. The guy came in and immediately elevated this group. As a run blocker, I think he's solid too. I don't want that to get lost. He has some moments where you want to see him be a little bit better. But I really like Joe Thuney. And if that's your left guard, you're in a really solid spot. At right guard, you've got Jonah Jackson, who, again, I like Jonah Jackson. I think he's a underrated player on this Bears team. He's got some size, some physicality to him. He's 6'4", he's 311 pounds. But a guy that is a really solid run blocker, graded out better in pass protection than he ever has in his career. But as a run blocker, he plays with that physicality and nastiness that you want to look for. So I like the Jonah Jackson pickup. And then Darnell Wright on the right side of this line is a really, really good player. He just got a big contract extension, which is honestly a steal. He has gotten better every year of his career. You could argue, outside of maybe Penei Sewell, he is the best run-blocking tackle in the league. He is just amazing out in space where he's a devastating athlete. He's powerful. He's strong. I really like Darnell Wright as your right tackle here, and he's a really good pass protector for you also. I think he could elevate his game even more to being one of the best pure tackles in the league. In terms of depth here, I don't really love a lot of these guards. You've got Luke Newman, who was a former 6th-round pick from Michigan State. Theo Benedet has done a little bit of everything. We mentioned Kieran Amagaji, Jordan McFadden's here as well. It's not awesome depth, but they have a really solid baseline in terms of the starters up front. I think both tackle positions should be good. And if Garrett Bradbury is not a liability up front, I think that they're going to have a really solid overall line. So overall, I love this Bears offense. I think they've got a lot of really exciting pieces. And if Caleb Williams can improve his accuracy, I think this team's going to have a really high ceiling. But that ceiling will only be met if the defense is not a liability. And unfortunately, this is a bad defense. Particularly up front. I think the secondary is pretty good. We'll talk about that. The linebacking crew, it's up and down, but overall positive. The defensive line is really bad for the Bears. And I think that I don't think enough people talk about just how poor this team has done at adding defensive line talent. I would have liked to have seen them make another play where they took Logan Jones. I would have taken an edge rusher where there were still some talented players on the board. Montezsweat is here. Montezsweat is the thing that is the best about this defensive line. He is a really solid overall 3-down player for this team who fits Dennis Allen's scheme perfectly, where he's got size. He's really strong up front. He's a, decent enough pass rusher. I don't think he's doing anything, that's blowing you away. His win rate was lower than I think you'd like to see in 2025, just an 11.4%, but 10 sacks, 49 pressures. He's a guy that I think defends the run really well. He's a pretty reliable tackler, can play well downhill. There's things that I do like about what Montezsweat can bring to the table. He's your number one. In a perfect world, I think Montezsweat is your number two, probably even better as I'm not going to say a number three because he's better than that, but he's probably your number two pass rusher, and here he's forced to be the number one. Now, I will talk about Austin Booker next, because if there is a player on this team that I think has the best chance to break out and be a number one, it is Austin Booker, who, when he's been on the field, has flashed really good upside. He played in just 500 snaps last year, 4.5 sacks, 30 pressures, under 10% win rate. I really liked him coming out of Kansas, but he was always a year away from being a year away. Well, we're entering year 3 now. He got better in his second season, and now in another year with this defense. I love the athletic profile. I think he's really explosive and bendy, and there's some upside there for him to potentially develop into being a really solid rotational pass rusher. I do really like that. But outside of those guys, good Lord, Dayo Odeyingbo, we'll have two parts of this conversation. And Dayo Odeyingbo, as a football player, is not good. And I don't know what they saw on the Colts tape that made them pay him as much money as they did. Yeah, he's kind of Dennis Allen's type, but as a Colts fan, Dayo Odeyingbo never did anything that I was like, oh, that guy is he should get paid a bunch of money. And I was honestly happy he left, because he's not a very good pass rusher. He's got size. He's got some decent run defending ability. He's 6'6", 280 pounds. Now, the reason that this is a two-part conversation is Dayo Odeyingbo's motivated this year. I'm joking, obviously. Dayo Odeyingbo's not going to do anything for this team. And then Shamar Turner here as well. I did not like this pick either. He gives them inside-outside flexibility. He's listed as an edge rusher on our lads for this team. I think he's probably more of an interior player. I did not see it with Shamar Turner, and he played in 72 snaps, had 0 pressures on those snaps, was not good for this team. So yeah, I don't like the edge depth at all. There's really no saving graces. They don't have any depth. They don't even have a good number 1. You've got a solid number 2. Austin Booker could be an okay number 3, but until you get that 1, I have a hard time buying into this group. I would have loved to have seen them make a trade for Max Crosby, make a play on Trey Hendrickson, and maybe they do that around midseason. But right now, going into the year, this is the worst group of edge rushers. I do like Gervon Dexter. I think he's a really solid interior defensive lineman. 6'6", 313 pounds, a really explosive player. He's gotten incrementally better each and every year of his career. I think he gets off the line of scrimmage really quickly. He has some quick wins, quick hands as a pass rusher, 10.5% pressure rate, 6 sacks, nearly 40 pressures. A good overall player and a guy that I do think, in a perfect world could be a solid interior defensive defensive lineman for you. Really good athlete. He doesn't defend the run really well. I like him much better as a pass rusher. He isn't the strongest guy. Again, he's probably a good number 2, number 3. He's kind of forced into a role that he's not comfortable with. Grady Jarrett is here, and he's just nothing like his former self anymore. He's clearly lost a step. He's can't tackle anymore. He's not a great run defender, and he's steadily fallen off every year of his career. He had to play way more than they wanted him to last year, and I just don't think that you're getting anything from Grady Jarrett at this point. You bring in Neville Gallimore from the Colts, who is okay defensive line depth. If you want to get better at defending the run, I do actually think Neville Gallimore helps you there. But he's 30 years old and never really done anything in the league and wasn't very good for the Colts last year. The only player I'll mention here is Jordan Vandenberg, who's a really explosive athlete with some potential. But even then, I was very low on Jordan Vandenberg. I did not think his tape was good whatsoever. So this is a really bad defensive line, and if you can't create pressure, you're putting a lot more strain on these linebackers, on the secondary to force turnovers, which they did last year, but expecting them to replicate the number of turnovers that they had is incredibly unlikely. But let's talk about these linebackers, where I actually think this is the most exciting part of this team. TJ Edwards is here as the quote-unquote number 1. He's a great player. The problem with TJ Edwards is he missed a lot of time last year, played in week 2, got hurt. You didn't see him again until week 6, played a few weeks, missed another little bit of time. He's just been in and out of the lineup a lot for this team, and I do think when he's on the field, he's a really instinctive downhill linebacker. I think he's smart. He reads things really well. He had a calf strain. He fractured his fibula in the wild card win against Green Bay, but he's back. They activate him off the PUP list. That's good news because I like what he brings from a coverage point of view. I think he's a reliable tackler. I think he's instinctive. And yeah, he's not a great athlete, but he just gets it. I think he's always 2 steps ahead and a really solid linebacker. But I do really like the linebacker depth here. You lose Tremaine Edmonds and you bring in Devin Bush, who is fascinating to me because Devin Bush, if you talked to me about Devin Bush a year ago, I was like, yeah, I'm probably out on him. Former first-round pick from the Steelers, was never good for them. And then Seattle, he goes to, they give up on him after 1 year. And he's kind of just been in Cleveland. He kind of falls into a full-time starting role last year. Had the best season of his career in run defense where he got better at taking on blocks. He's a phenomenal athlete. You saw the coverage come along where he 3 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, played really well in coverage, was great as a blitz threat because of his athleticism. Devin Bush is a fascinating player because throughout his career, he's been very inconsistent. Now he seems like he's really turned a corner in his 3rd, 4th contract now. That's kind of what you expect from these linebackers. I actually feel pretty optimistic that he can be this rangy, athletic linebacker that can just wreak havoc all around the field. I really like Devin Bush. I think he's going to be a pretty solid player. This is a team that does have so much linebacker depth, though. DeMarco Jackson, to me, is a fascinating player that this team brings in. They bring him back. When he was on the field for this team last year, was really solid. He tackles really well. He had 34 tackles, under a 10% missed tackle rate. In coverage, was pretty good, made some plays on the ball. He's a good athlete. He's starting to kind of come into his own as a Dennis Allen guy. He drafted him in New Orleans. If TJ Edwards is forced to miss time again, I would not be shocked at all if we see DeMarco Jackson step up and is really good. You've got Ruben Hippolyte, who is a 4th-round pick, who's just a ridiculously good athlete, but probably not much more than that. Keyshawn Elliott in the 5th round, I thought was a steal. I love his instincts and very similar profile to TJ Edwards, as not a amazing athlete laterally, but a smart player. And then Jack Sanborn comes back, who's just a really instinctive linebacker as well. So they've got a lot of depth in this linebacking room that I'm really excited to see what it's going to look like. And then it leads us into the secondary, which is a really interesting group. There's a lot to kind of talk about. You've got one of the best corners in the NFL in Jaylon Johnson, who I think is underrated and probably properly rated at the same time. The thing with Jaylon Johnson is just health. It feels like he's always on the injury report and missing time. Had an interception, had 4 pass breakups. When he's on the field, he's really good. He's hard to complete passes against because he plays a lot of zone coverage and he's really smart. He closes on the ball really well. He doesn't allow very much over the top. He's not this superstar athlete. He doesn't bring this crazy high floor in man-to-man coverage, but he's smart, he's instinctive, and he closes on the ball. And I like him a lot in that role. Struggled a little bit as a tackler, which you want to see get a little bit better from him. But as your number 1, I think he's in a really good spot. Tyreek Stevenson as your number 2. You can live with Tyreek Stevenson as your number 2. It's very similar to like Tariq Woolen as your number 2. Tyreek Stevenson is a downhill run defender. It's awesome. He's aggressive. He's physical. You love that. The physicality does show up for him in coverage where he does get penalized quite a bit. He had 5 penalties last year, but he got a lot better in coverage in year 3. I thought we really started to see the pieces come together. He allowed just 61.5%, an interception, 9 pass breakup. Look, he'll take his losses. He's very feast or famine as a corner, but a really solid player nonetheless. And then you've got Kyler Gordon here as well as your kind of nickel. Kyler Gordon is very similar to Jaylon Johnson, where he's always injured. Like, this is a player that when he's on the field is a really good nickel. He does everything you want to see from the nickel position. He defends the run. He's physical, tackles extremely well. In coverage, I think he gives you pretty solid range. You just can't rely on him to stay healthy. He played in just 5 games for this team last year. Luckily, he was available for the playoffs, but he's had a persistent calf injury. He's on the PUP list right now. I don't know what to expect there. In terms of boundary corner depth, you draft Malik Muhammad in the 4th round, which I think is a solid enough addition in the 4th. I wasn't the highest on him, but I thought it was good value there. You've got Terrell Smith here. And then in nickel depth, you've got Jalen Jones. Dallas Flowers is here as well. It's an interesting group. The safety room is where it's going to be pretty interesting because it's a completely new look. They let Jaquan Brisker go and they bring in Kobe Bryant, who ends up getting hurt in training camp. He should be back around week 4 or 5, it looks like, which is a huge kind of saving grace. Kobe Bryant was good for the Seahawks last year. Like 4 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, solid enough run defender, misses a lot of tackles. That's been a huge concern for him. But I think he gives you a high floor in the back end, a guy that played primarily a free safety role. I don't think that's what they're going to ask him to do this year. I think he'll play a little bit more closer to the box where they didn't really ask him to play a lot. That was Nicky Manwari's role, and he was awesome at it. We'll see what he can do. I think they both are. He's probably better as a rangy free safety with his athleticism. But you draft Dylan Thieneman in the 1st round, who I think is way better as a free safety. He's got the athleticism to really make plays on the back end. And you go back to that true freshman season at Purdue, that's what he did so well. He was incredible in that role. I think he's going to fit there well. Oregon played him a lot closer to the box, and he was really efficient there. Was good as a tackler, recognized run concepts well, had the speed to close downhill. A lot to like about Dylan Thieneman. I think he's a sleeper for Defensive Rookie of the Year because I do think he's going to rack up a lot of production. I like his odds just as much, if not more, than Caleb Downs. I think Caleb Downs is a better player, but in terms of safety depth, you have Cam Lewis, who comes over from Buffalo. He's kind of been a rotational piece for them. Elijah Hicks is another guy that's a depth option, but he's in on the injury report. They don't have a lot of great depth in the safety room or in the really anywhere on the defense for that matter. But I do like what they have in terms of boundary corners. I like the linebacking room, and I think that should be enough. And when you look at this Bears team, there's a lot to get excited about. A great coaching staff, an exciting young quarterback, a team that just, I feel like, is going in the right direction with the way they're building it, young skill positions, good secondary. And I'm really excited about what they can do. Now, they did win the division last year, which is great, but naturally that means you're going to have a little bit of a tougher schedule. I do think there's some pretty winnable matchups on there, though, because you get the AFC East and you get the NFC South, which I think is a huge break for this team. You get Carolina, Minnesota, Philly, and the Jets your first 4 weeks. I think that they go 4-0, and then you got a divisional round on the road at Green Bay. There's some tough matchups in here. Like, you got to go to Seattle week 8, to Green Bay is always a tough one, to Buffalo week 15. That's going to be a tough matchup. Obviously, Thanksgiving against Detroit will be tough. But there's a lot of winnable games here. Like, the games that, to me, I don't feel great about. I don't feel awesome about Seattle. New England, I'm iffy on. I think you probably split with the Packers. You probably split with the Lions. That's 4 losses. Maybe they get one more loss. I mean, even with a tougher schedule, I still think that this Bears team is a 12-5 team. I think that they've got a really good infrastructure in place. I'm betting on Caleb Williams this year. I haven't made my award predictions, but he is strongly in consideration for me for MVP. I think he's going to have a huge year. I love the skill positions, and as I talked about, I'm just so high on Ben Johnson and what he brings to the table. So, yeah, that's what we got for you guys, Bears fans. I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you think I'm too high? Do you think I'm too low? Comment that down below. But that's going to do it for me. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.